Welcome to Success Redefined with Dr. Tony Warner. I'm Dr. Tony, mom of 5, psychotherapist, author, and mentor. Here, you're going to find insightful discussions spanning science, psychology, and soul as the personal and professional meet, and we explore the intersection of what really matters. So success can be redefined with connection, healing, and fulfillment in mind. Welcome to our very first episode of the season 2 of the Success Redefined podcast. I'm so glad that I get to do another season of this podcast. I learned a lot after the first season, and that means that I needed to make some tweaks in order for this podcast to continue to be considered successful for me. And for me, that means creating a podcast and showing up for a podcast that helps support the lifestyle that I want to live and also helps demonstrate the values that I believe deep in my core, like I want to live in alignment with and show up in the world with. So I always try to engage in reflection intentionally at various points of time throughout the day, the year, the months, and I needed to do that when I was relaunching and planning this season 2. So this first episode is about why I am doing things the way that I'm doing and what I've learned, because there's always lessons that can be learned from the experiences that we have in life. I think that's part of how we can feel successful more often, is to be willing to say, all right, I had these experiences and here are some lessons that I've learned from them. You know, I don't know everything. I don't get it right all the time. And that's okay. That's completely normal. That's to be expected. All right. So here are some of my takeaways from what I learned from season 1. And if you haven't tuned into season 1, I highly recommend it. We have 32 episodes, maybe 33. I think it's 32 episodes. It was such an amazing season, and we talk about a variety of different topics that are really relevant to folks like us, people who want to do well personally and want to do well professionally, right? We want to feel successful in the various aspects of our lives. And so we dive into how to do that in the business sense. We dive into how to do that as a parent. We dive into how to do that as a leader. We dive into how to do that in light of neurodivergence, in light of the political landscape. Like, we dive into how to do that in so many different ways at the intersection of so many different things that really and truly are affecting each and every one of us in way in our lives, especially during this time in history that we're all living in. So check that out. You know, go ahead and see what episodes you gravitate to and tune in, leave a comment, ask a question. And if you're joining us on YouTube, you can go ahead and you can actually begin a conversation in the underneath the description area. You can put comments in there and I will respond to you, and other folks that resonate with your message might respond to. So for this season 2, we are going to do some things different and some things the same. Here are my top 4 lessons learned, changes that you might notice from season 1 to season 2. The first one, I was reminded to follow what inspires me. And sometimes I forget that. Life is a process of forgetting and remembering, relearning things maybe in different ways. And so sometimes I need to be reminded that following what inspires me is one of the most important things when it comes to big decisions that I make in my life, and small decisions sometimes too. But I found that of all of those episodes that I did in season 1, the ones that lit me up the most, the ones where I could feel that fire burning in my belly in all the good ways, those were the interviews that I did that focused on mental health in some capacity. Now, the thread of mental health is there in everything I do say, talk about, for sure, but The interviews that I did with guests where mental health was a significant focus of the conversation, whether it was their mental health because of the challenges that they experienced or what had been affecting their mental health and what they were able to do to change it, the barriers that got in the way of some of the things they needed to do to help their mental health get better, those were the episodes that lit me up the most. And when it has to do with mental health and how it affects our relationships, it lights me up even more. So I needed to pay attention to that. If that lights me up the most, and is a huge part of what I do in my work as a clinician as well, then I might as well notice that, right? I might as well do something with that in a way that feels really good and true and right and of value to me. So what does that mean? That means that this season, I only am having guests on that are in the mental health arena. So they are a health and human service professional in some capacity, and they are thoroughly vetted. And what that provides us is such rich conversation that is real and raw and authentic from professionals that also have personal experience in the realm of mental health. And I think that speaks volumes for those who maybe feel a gap between the professionals that help people when they're having challenges versus them feeling like there's a personal, relatable connection with their own self and that professional. Like if I'm going through something and I'm talking to a professional that seems like they don't really get it, or they don't have any experience with it, or maybe they just don't really seem like they have some empathy towards it, then it makes it harder for me to feel like they can help me. And there is a gap that exists between professionals in the mental health field and in other fields as well. But between professionals and those they seek to help. And I think we can actually close that gap in a way that's really meaningful and really intentional. So follow what inspires you. And that applies off the podcast too. Get an idea of what inspires you. Notice what inspires you and follow that. Pay attention to that. It is something that is worthy of our attention. Next one. Less is more. Again, needed to be reminded of this. Have learned this many times and will probably learn it many times over again and again and again. But less is more. I pre-recorded so many episodes for season 1 because I was going out on maternity leave and I wanted them to be able to launch even while I was out of the office, even while I was, with my babies. And so I recorded a lot. However, that ultimately became overwhelming for me on the back end to make sure all of those videos were prepped and all of the automation was up and running before I went out on maternity leave. And then even sometimes during my maternity leave, I was wanting to check to make sure that things were the way they needed to be in order for them to properly execute. And I want this podcast to feel smooth. I want it to feel like it is not based on force and like rigidity, but is based out of this place of inspiration, right? Leading me back to that first point, that first lesson I was reminded of what follow what inspires you. I want it to be based out of that. I want it to be rooted in that. And so less is more supports me in following what inspires me. So that means that for this season, I have significantly less guests coming on. There will be 7 total guest episodes that will be launching over the course of this season. And these episodes are, the word that keeps coming to me is just, they're just rich. They're hefty in all of the good ways. They're deep in all of the good ways. They're different in all of the good ways. And so less is more. I didn't need to record, another 30 episodes like I did during the first season. I feel very strongly that the 7 guests that we have on, they truly align with the vision and the values of this podcast and what I want it to represent. And so they're going to deliver. They do deliver. I think you'll find that they really do deliver from this really meaningful place. Okay, number 3, the next lesson I learned. Less teaching, more guesting. I really love teaching. I am a therapist at heart, and that comes with also being an educator. One of my masters is in clinical social work, the other master's is in education. So I love teaching, but that really isn't supposed to be the main point, the main focus of this podcast. It's going to come up and out because it's part of who I am and how I am and the way that I interact and speak, but it's not the main focus of this podcast. Now, I do very much want this podcast to be mentally stimulating, to provide some mental challenge in ways that foster growth. That's part of the growth process, right? If we want to grow, if we want to develop personally, there needs to be some mental stimulation and some mental challenge in there. So I do want that to be a part of this podcast, but I truly want the primary focus of this podcast to be deeply, meaningfully inspiring. I want it to feel emotionally elevating and illuminating. It felt most natural for me to provide this experience through conversations with guests for this season. Now, I absolutely believe, and have experienced that I can provide this experience in solo episodes as well. And I will. What I decided to do is that rather than have scheduled solo episodes, I'm going to only do solo episodes as bonus episodes when I feel most called to do that, because I think it's going to help support furthering that kind of environment, that kind of conversation that I'm wanting to create here on this podcast. So that's a big part of what has helped me hone in on how I want to focus and how I want to share things during the second season. Now, it may evolve again during season 3. In fact, I suspect it will, and that's okay, because we are always evolving, right? Always experiencing, learning from those experiences, and then always able to evolve as a result. And the fourth one is more sharing. One of my own personal hangups is that as a result of my own experiences throughout childhood and just the way that I had filtered life, was I often believed that people just didn't care about what I had to say. And so there's this part of me that I've worked to heal and to shift my own internal relationship and dialogue with. But it has sometimes held me back from sharing really valuable experiences, stories, information, resources that I have created, because sometimes I can convince myself, oh, well, no one's going to want that anyway, or no one's going to care about that anyway, or no one's going to see that anyway, or whatever the case may be. And so I have been reminded again that more sharing is showing caring. And so these episodes, I do believe, are life enhancing. They are packed with so much richness, as I have said. And I truly believe that those who tune in and resonate with some of the messaging here, they're going to benefit in countless ways. So if I'm not sharing more and more and more, how can more people hear it? And if I'm not asking you, the audience, to share more and more and more, how can more people hear it? How can more people benefit from it, right? So if no one's hearing it, no one's learning about it, no one's sharing it, then others aren't benefiting from it. So I have decided that I'm going to invest, and I have been actually on the back end, even before the season has launched. I've been investing more time in creating mini clips of the larger episodes and creating YouTube shorts of the larger episodes so that I can share those out as sneak peeks, as a little bit of a glimpse into the larger episode, so that more and more people can be able to access some of this amazing conversation that we have and be stimulated in all these amazing ways from these conversations that we're having. And so that my guests can have their brilliance and their wisdom and their uniqueness shared out into the world to impact the ripple effects that I know they can and do impact. So these are my 4 lessons learned that many if not all are lessons that I have learned before and have been reinforced to me, and lessons that I'll continue to learn again and again. And they are: 1, follow what inspires you; 2, less is more. 3, less teaching, more guesting. 4, more sharing, because sharing can indeed be caring. If you are here for the first time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you are coming back for season 2 and you've tuned in to some of season 1, welcome back. I am so glad you're here. Please check out our very first guest episode. You will not want to miss it. I have a very, very special guest. Links related to this episode can be found in the show notes section. Want to submit questions about success, satisfaction, healing, and relationships, health, or work? You can do that free and anonymous at drtonywarner.com, where you'll find other resources there as well. Did you benefit from this episode? You can subscribe, like, and share with another to pass it on, because anyone can listen on the go with this podcast audio available on all major podcasting platforms.